We're in the townland of Ballygila, the parish of Ardkeen on the Ards Peninsula, and we're standing outside a little cottage here, and John McGuinness is going to tell us a little bit of history about this cottage.
Well, this cottage here belonged to a lady called Lizzie Carson, and she sold it, and my grandfather Johnny Curran bought the property for £100, and there was five and a half acres in it, and it's in the hands of the Currans, I suppose, over 100 years since my grandfather got it. You know, he normally had 2 cows, and then he would, whenever those cows calved, the calves were reared here, and then he would have bought calves in, you know, that way. And he had, then across the road he reared pigs there, and they were pork pigs that were slaughtered here, and whenever they were slaughtered there, they were hung up on a ladder for the blood in it, and get them cured, and then the Northern Ireland transport came the next morning and took them away, and that was it.
Did the farmer slaughter those himself, or was there a specific man came round, a butcher, to do it?
No, Pat John Hamilton of the quarter at the 4 roads beside the quarter church. Pat John lived there, and he was a pig butcher in those days, and you had to be on the alert that morning, brave and early, and we had what was known as a bushel pot, a 3-legged pot, and you had to fill it with water and get it boiled on the fire for the butcher, for he needed a lot of water, and for the shave the pig and take the hair off and shave them in, and clean it whenever they took the stomach out of it and all, to wash it out and all, and then he wouldn't have been the most pleasant man if things wasn't going right for him, the butcher, but he liked the water warm, you know, even in the summertime. And I remember I had warts in the back of my hand, and I was only a wee nipper, and he says to me, he says, did you ever think of getting them cured? I say, where could I get them cured? Well, he says, look, whenever he felt that pig, hit it with a hammer, knocked it out, then he cut its throat. He said, you stick your hand in there, and the warm blood, oh God, it was right up me, and to see it within a week or so, there wasn't a word to be seen. That was that bit of escapade. So that's as far as that goes. And there are normally 2 horses there too, you see. And that, the stable is at the back there.
This was cart horses?
Yes. And there was 2 stalls there for the horses. And then there's a bit at the back was corrugated iron. The cows was kept in there. So I mean, it was all a very complex sort of business. My granda had, there was 5 of a family, and they're all girls. The first girl, I think she only lived about a year or something. She took something, and that was her gone. But then there was, that was, you want their names?
Yeah, go ahead.
She was Hessie Margaret, and then the next one after that was Rosina. And then the next one after that was my mother, Sarah Mary. And then the next one after that was Annie. She was called after my Granny Curran. And then the youngest one was Kathleen. That was the 5 girls. And they earned their living by embroidery, as I told you before, and however, there wasn't a lot of money coming in, but you just had to survive.
Yep.
In those days, I think everybody sort of was nearly happy that, in that situation. They got a diploma from the Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth, on her coronation, they done bedclothes, sheets, and pillows with the R.E. on them, Elizabeth reigneth, and they done all that by hand embroidery. And I saw them later on, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, still working at it. There's two, especially Rosina and Kathleen, were the two main embroidery girls. They really, and for all the money they got for that, it was very, very, very little. I think an old money for one of those sheets would have got a shilling, and for the pillow they got 10 pennies. So I mean, let's face it, it wasn't too lavish. The cow's milk was put into crocks, and they were kept for about maybe 7 days, the cover over them. And then the night before the churning, usually on a Monday, the crocks were brought and set it at the fire, back of the fire, where they speeded the heat up a bit on them. And then on Monday morning, they were put into the churn. It was a staff churn. It was churned by a staff. It wasn't a barrel churn. So then on Monday, there was three would be at that churn. My granda, Johnny Curran, and Kathleen, and my granny. They were the only three that were sort of we could operate, because there was a rhythm with the staff, and I never could get it, because whenever I was putting, I must have hit and up, the milk was coming up. I used to get vanished way out on the field away somewhere out of the way till they got that churn. And then whenever that was churned, the butter was gathered then and was put in what was known then as a kimlin. It was like a wooden container, like a barrel cut off, that way, but it was a purpose-made thing, and the butter was put in it, and then it was flattened down there, and with a wee spade they had for the job, it was flattened down, and then there was a dinner spoon got there, and whenever that butter was all flat, the dinner spoon was run through it, vice versa. That way first, then this way, and that was commonly known as hairing the butter, in case there was any hairs in the butter. And whenever it was done that way, it was cleaned on warm water, and then it was done the other way. And then it was brought out then, and it was put on to what was known in them days. There was a spade, wooden, it was all wood, a wooden spade. It was put onto a printer, and it was hammered down onto it. And then it was turned out onto the dish, and that was your pint of butter. That would be an equivalent of about a pound of butter now. And I remember people coming here for buttermilk. And my granny, which nobody would do now, she would have took a pint of butter and just put it into the can along with whatever buttermilk the neighbours got. That way. And I mean, let's face it, whenever you were eating butter then, in those days, you sure were eating butter, that way. It wasn't like this stuff you get now, out of pasty stuff. That was the real macaw.
So the girls all worked at home till they got married, I take it?
There's only one got married, was my mother.
Oh, right.
The other four, or the other three rather,
yep,
they were more sense, they never bothered. And my granddad, you see, he would have went to different farmers at different times and give a hand, if it was reaping time or sowing time, or the neighbour to each other. And if there's any difficulty with a cow giving birth, I saw him going away. Maybe it went away at 3 o'clock in the morning to somebody to give a hand. You know, that way. That's the way it was. And there was a cow. There was a wee heifer here, and she put her cow bed out. And Hugh David Gilmer, the vet, Kirkcobin, he was Bobby's father, Hugh David. He came here, and within 10 minutes, that bar there's 5 or 6 farmers in it. And he put that cow bed back in, and he stitched her. And they got a rope round her, and the beam in there, and they pulleyed her up onto the beam, and he kept her up there. And that was all right. That was that night. I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. There was a noise back in the yard, and my granddad said, "What would that be?" And he pulled on the threads and went out. And it was Hugh David Gilmer in the bar to see how the wee heifer went on. And the words he said to me, he says, "Johnny, do you know what I'm going to tell you?" He says, "If you just hadn't been really a poor man, not taking anything away from me, but he says, poor man on the farming line," he says, "I wouldn't have performed that operation." But hopefully, and then it came the time she'd come all right again, and they didn't know where would she ever have any more cows or what's going to happen, but he wouldn't part her. So she had 2 more cows after that. There were no cars then, and they walked from here to Ard King to get the bus to go to Portaferry or Newton Ards. And my granny Curran, the only time ever she'd been out of the door was a harvest fair day in Newton Ards. And she went every harvest fair day to Newton Ards. And she maybe would have bought a rope or something, brought home to my granda. But it wasn't called a rope in them days, it was a rein. Reins for the horses, but it came to be, it was a rope then, but it wasn't a rope in them days, it was two lengths of reins for the horse. Oh, it's wonderful.
Reins or a rape, I suppose.
A rape. You tied the stack down with a rape.
Aye.
That was it. Aye. And then at the threshing time, in that wee garden where you parked there, it was there, and James Henry Durran was the millman then, and James Henry Durran never took the mill in there. He kept her in the lane there because he had no problem getting her set there. It was good hard ground. That's where the threshing was done, in the lane. Aye. And then when it was corn, then there's very few people had barley in those days. It was corn, and then it went. My granddad took it from here to the Bishop Mills, to the Birches, to get it smashed or grind it, whatever you want to call it. And he would have went then, and he would have went to Birches too, and Birches maybe somebody would have had maybe half an acre of wheat, and Birches, they made that wheat into wheat meal, and that's where my granny got the wheat meal to bake the bread. And oaten bread too, and it was crushed up. And the way it was to be, the wildfire in there with the 2 hobs, and she would have set whenever she baked the oaten bread, she would have set it up in its end against the kettle, and then it started to go that way. She turned it around and she put it the other way, and that hardened it out completely. Right? Just imagine. Right? You never would even see oaten bread now or nothing like that. No, not at all.